I'm going to renovate the garage and turn it into a living space, and I'm going to live here. You're single and living alone in such a big house, so there's no problem with your family using it, right? My younger sister Madeline said this with a triumphant smile, spreading both arms wide like a stage actress delivering her final line. Behind her, the shrill noise of an electric drill echoed through the air, while unfamiliar workers mercilessly tore apart the walls of the garage that I had poured my heart and soul into creating. Just a few hours earlier, I had been delighted to finish a grueling project in Frankfurt and return home 3 days earlier than scheduled. I had even forgotten the exhaustion of the long flight, wishing from the bottom of my heart to hurry back to my beloved home. It had a minimalist space dominated by white, soft light streaming in through large floor-to-ceiling windows. And above all, I treasured the custom island kitchen that I had meticulously designed and selected myself, along with a perfectly soundproofed home theater wrapped in absolute silence. The investment of $880,000 was the culmination of my career, and it was more than worth its value. That house was the crystallization of my efforts, a sacred sanctuary that no one had the right to defile. As the scenery flowing past the taxi window shifted into the familiar, quiet residential neighborhood, a sigh of relief naturally escaped my lips. The car slowly came to a stop in front of my house, and I thanked the driver before stepping outside. But something was wrong. A white van I didn't recognize was parked in front of the house. The cargo area was crudely loaded with what looked like tools and construction materials, and a faint smell of paint hung in the air. And from the garage, which should have been enveloped in silence, came the piercing sound of an electric drill and the deep, rough voices of several men talking. My heart began to pound with an unpleasant thud. Feeling cold sweat run down my spine, I left my suitcase where it was and hurried toward the garage. It was my special space, equipped with specialized tools and custom lighting to keep my beloved car in perfect condition. Yet for some reason, the shutter was left about halfway open. The moment I ducked down and slipped inside, I caught my breath. It was no longer the garage I knew. The slate gray walls I had carefully chosen were partially destroyed, leaving bare concrete and steel framing exposed. The once smooth floor had deep grooves carved into it, likely for running pipes, and brand new PVC pipes were scattered carelessly across it. 3 unfamiliar workers, drenched in sweat, were fastening what looked like new insulation onto the walls. And calmly supervising the construction were my mother, my father, and Madeline. "What on earth are you doing?" At my strained voice, they turned around without a hint of guilt. They looked surprised. However, there was not a trace of guilt to be found anywhere among them. On the contrary, my mother smiled warmly, as if flowers were blooming across her face, and walked toward me. "Oh, Brianna, welcome home. You're back much earlier than I expected. I was hoping this would be a lovely surprise for you, but now it's ruined." A surprise? This completely devastated scene before my eyes? My mind went blank with confusion. My father, too, waved his hand casually and said, "Oh, you're back already. That was a long trip, wasn't it?" And then Madeline added, "Look, don't you think it's going to be lovely? This is going to be my new bedroom very soon." Those words slowly, but unmistakably, pierced my mind, which had already lost its sense of reality. Madeline's voice rang out with strange clarity amid the deafening noise of the garage, as if this were something that had been decided long ago, an obvious and unquestionable fact. I looked at Madeline, then at my parents, back and forth. "What do you mean?" My mother spoke in a tone that sounded gentle, yet allowed no room for argument. "Madeline's apartment is expensive, and it's far too cramped for her. You're using this house all by yourself, so it wouldn't hurt to let your sister use the garage, would it? We're family after all, and helping each other is only natural." Helping each other? I raised my voice without meaning to. "This isn't helping each other. This is trespassing. Why would you do something like this without saying a single word to me first?" My father shook his head in exasperation. "If we asked you, you would obviously say no. You're always like that. You cling to what's yours and never try to share it with your family." At those words, I felt as if all the blood in my body were rushing backward. Cling? Why is it called clinging when I'm simply cherishing the house I worked desperately for and obtained with my own strength? More importantly, how did you even get inside? When I demanded that, Madeline showed no sign of guilt at all and casually pulled a key out of her handbag with a sharp click. There was no mistaking it. It was the key to my house. Oh, this? During the housewarming party the other day, I borrowed the key you left in the kitchen and had a copy made at a nearby shop. Is there a problem? It felt like being struck on the head with a blunt weapon. That day, when I had invited friends and family and believed it to be one of the happiest moments of my life. All that time, my sister must have carried out this plan behind her smile. It was a plan that trampled on my trust, violated my privacy, and took my property. Anger flared up from the depths of my heart like a cold, burning flame. I turned to face the workers and spoke in a firm, unwavering voice. Please stop working, immediately. This construction is canceled. The workers looked at each other in confusion, then turned their eyes toward my parents. The man who seemed to be the leader began to say, "But we've already received the contract payment from the lady." Before I cut him off, "That contract is invalid. I am the owner of this house. The person who hired you may be my mother standing right there, but she has absolutely no right to renovate this property. So please pack up your tools at once and leave this premises." Perhaps overwhelmed by my forcefulness, or perhaps sensing the risk of legal trouble, the workers exchanged glances and then quietly nodded. As they silently began to clean up, I stepped back in front of my family. "Leave, right now." "Brianna, have you lost your mind?" my mother screamed shrilly. "I am perfectly sane, and if anything, you're the ones who aren't. This is trespassing and property damage. Remember this, being family doesn't matter. I will seriously sue you." At my unwavering words, Madeline's eyes widened for a brief moment, but soon her expression twisted into a scornful sneer. "No way. You'd never sue your own family. I know you're all talk. I'll leave for today, but I'll be back." After spitting that out, Madeline urged our parents, who still looked like they had something to say, and they all left the house. I stood alone in the middle of the ruined garage. Just a few hours ago, this place had been my pride, my perfect ideal space. Now it looked like a disaster site. My anger had not disappeared. Deep inside, it was still boiling like molten magma, but more than that, a deep, overwhelming sadness wrapped itself around me. I had been betrayed like this by the family I trusted. They hadn't just marched into my castle with their shoes on. They had destroyed its interior without a second thought. Madeline's mocking laughter echoed over and over in my ears. I sank down weakly onto the exposed concrete floor. Hugging my knees, I have no idea how long I stayed there. As night began to fall, I quietly stood up. With trembling hands, I opened my smartphone's contacts and called one person. It was Heather, my best friend since college. "Brianna, what's wrong calling at a time like this? Your voice is shaking." Hearing the worried voice on the other end of the line, the tension holding me together snapped, and I poured out everything at once. After listening to it all in silence, Heather spoke quietly but with burning anger in her voice. "I can't believe this. They're monsters. Brianna, you did nothing wrong. Don't ever just accept this and suffer in silence. I'm coming over right now. You're not alone." Heather's words became a small light flickering in my heart, which had been frozen solid. That's right. I wasn't alone. While waiting for Heather to arrive, I searched on my phone for a 24-hour locksmith service and made a call. I briefly explained the situation and asked them to replace all the locks in the house as quickly as possible. Fortunately, they said they could arrive in about an hour. While waiting for the locksmith, I went around locking every single window in the house. I couldn't shake the unpleasant feeling that someone might be watching me. The sound of the intercom made my heart jump, but on the monitor was Heather, who had rushed over out of breath. The moment I opened the door, she wrapped me in a tight hug. "It's okay, I'm here with you." I can't even put into words how reassuring those words were. Before long, the locksmith arrived and began the work. The front door, the back door, and the garage, every lock was replaced with high-security, state-of-the-art dimple keys. Heather and I listened together to the sharp sound of metal being shaved away. The anxiety that would have crushed me if I'd been alone gradually transformed into a solid sense of safety, as if a physical barrier of protection were being rebuilt, simply because she was there beside me. After thanking the locksmith and seeing him off, I clenched the new keys left in my hand tightly. They were a symbol of my resolve. That night, I barely slept. Heather and I sat side by side on the living room sofa, turning things over in our minds. Madeline and the others think I'll just get emotional, yell a bit, and then end up suffering in silence. They're convinced I'm bound by the chains called family and that I won't be able to do anything. When I said that, Heather squeezed my hand and spoke firmly. That's exactly why just getting emotional isn't enough, Brianna. This is precisely the time to respond calmly and legally. Wasn't there a professional who helped you when you bought this house? Maybe a lawyer who specializes in real estate. Heather's words carved a single, clear path through my confused thoughts. That's right. I knew exactly who she meant. The next morning, I took action. I called the lawyer who had helped me with the purchase of this house a few months earlier, someone well-versed in real estate matters. Luckily, he was able to make time for me right away. So that's the situation. I intend to hold them legally accountable. Over the phone, I explained what had happened the day before, calmly setting aside my emotions and laying out only the facts, thoroughly and in detail. After listening in silence, the lawyer spoke in a calm but powerful tone. Miss Brianna, I understand how you feel, and your judgment is completely correct. This is not a simple family dispute. Unlawful entry, property damage, and the unauthorized duplication and use of a key could even constitute criminal theft. You were wise to contact me immediately, without acting on emotion. His words brought a clear sense of direction to my once chaotic mind. He carefully explained, step by step, the specific legal actions I should take. First, I needed to gather evidence, photographs and records of payments made to the contractors, and file a formal damage report with the police. At the same time, I should proceed with filing for a restraining order against them. Listen carefully, Miss Brianna, the lawyer said at the end. You may be forced into a lonely battle from here on out, but the law is on your side. Never let your emotions take control. We will pursue full responsibility for their actions, strictly in accordance with the rules of the law. After ending the call, I took a deep breath. A lonely battle. Those words settled into me with surprising clarity. I was alone. But it was not a loneliness born of despair. I was convinced that this was a proud solitude, one meant to carve open my future with my own strength. After finishing the call with the lawyer, I moved into action immediately. First, with my smartphone in hand, I took dozens of photos of the devastated garage from every possible angle. The exposed steel beams, the dug-up floor, the brutal holes torn into the walls. They would become irrefutable evidence of the crimes they had committed. Next, I converted the electronic receipt for the locksmith I had paid the night before and the bank transfer record for the contractor whose work I had forced to stop into PDFs, and sent them to my lawyer by email without delay. The evidence was complete. From there, I headed straight to the police station with jurisdiction over the area. When I told the receptionist, I'm here to file a damage report for unlawful entry and property destruction. The officer's eyes, initially somewhat routine and detached, gradually hardened as he listened to my calm, detailed explanation and looked through the many photos I showed him on my smartphone. You're saying this was done by your family? Yes, my parents and my sister. I told him everything exactly as it was, including the fact that a duplicate key had been made without my permission and that they had shown not the slightest trace of guilt. The detective handling my case seemed a little surprised by how composed I was, but he quickly understood that this was not a simple family squabble, but a serious and malicious incident. I understand, ma'am. We will formally accept your damage report. We will begin an investigation and question the suspects. Is that acceptable to you? Yes, please proceed. I want this handled strictly, in accordance with the law. After completing all the procedures and leaving the police station, my heart felt strangely calm. When I lifted my gaze, I noticed a familiar car parked across the street. Of course, I had told her that I was going to the police. She must have been worried about me and waited there like this. The car door opened quietly, and Heather walked toward me. She didn't say much, just looked at me with concerned eyes and gently held out a paper cup she was carrying. It was hot coffee. The warmth seeped slowly into my stiff fingers and all the way into my heart. The solid feeling that I wasn't alone strengthened my resolve. There was no turning back. I had chosen to fight my family with the law. The next day, I took time off work and was in the middle of a strategy meeting with my lawyer. Right at that very moment, my smartphone suddenly began ringing with a shrill ringtone. The name displayed on the screen was Madeline. I rejected the call once, but the moment it cut off, it began ringing again insistently. At my lawyer's signal, I switched to speakerphone and answered. Hello. Brianna, what do you think you're doing? What came through the phone was Madeline's voice, close to a shriek, a panicked scream on the verge of hysteria. There are 5 police cars in front of the house. They even have their sirens on. All the neighbors are watching. What is this supposed to mean? This is because of you, isn't it? Keeping the receiver slightly away from my ear, I answered calmly. Yes, it is. I'm the one who called the police. This is the natural consequence of what you did, isn't it? You've got to be kidding me. You seriously called the police? You reported your own family? The noise on the other end of the line suddenly swelled. Mixed in with Madeline's shrieks, I could hear my mother sobbing hysterically, my father shouting angrily at someone, and over it all, a low but authoritative male voice trying to bring order to the chaos. All of you are requested to come with us to the station on suspicion of unlawful entry, property damage, and theft. No, let go of me. It wasn't me. Stop it. Don't touch my daughter. Hey, you. Do you even have a warrant? I heard a sharp, metallic clank, followed by Madeline's piercing scream. You idiot, Brianna. You're the worst. You've ruined my life. With those words, the call was abruptly cut off. For a while, I stared silently at the black screen of my smartphone. The lawyer quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. Miss Brianna, this is reality. They are only now beginning to understand what consequences their actions have brought upon them. I nodded slowly. Madeline screamed that her life had been ruined because of me. But that wasn't true. She had simply destroyed her own life through her shallow, selfish desires. In the days following Madeline and the others being taken into custody, I received several calls from relatives, but I ignored every single one. I didn't need to hear what they wanted to say. Why would you do this to your own family? You didn't have to take it this far. Words like that could never dull my resolve. From the police station where they were being held, I received only formal procedural updates through the detective in charge. As expected, a few days later, my lawyer was contacted by another attorney, apparently one they had hired themselves. They want a settlement. They want me to withdraw the charges immediately. My lawyer, following my instructions exactly, refused their request. Miss Brianna's resolve is firm. We are already fully prepared to take this to court. At that point, Madeline and the others completely changed their approach. They resorted to emotional manipulation. My mother sent a letter through the lawyer, and my father pleaded, saying, "Please don't destroy our daughter's future." As for Madeline, I was told she repeatedly made an outrageously self-centered plea, saying, "I'll do anything you say, Brianna, so please help me. I don't want a criminal record." I heard all of this through reports from my lawyer and responded with just one word. So? They still did not understand the weight of the crimes they had committed. They simply wanted to escape the immediate consequences in front of them. I had no intention whatsoever of showing mercy to people like that. My heart was completely calm. After the stalemate dragged on for some time, the opposing lawyer, clearly running out of patience, made a formal request to begin settlement negotiations. Their desperation to avoid prosecution was painfully obvious. After consulting with my lawyer, I decided to accept the proposal. Not because I intended to forgive them, but because I wanted my conditions recognized with full legal force. I did not attend the negotiations. I entrusted everything to my lawyer, my legal representative. The settlement terms we presented were simple and absolute. First, immediate payment of $50,000, the full amount estimated by a professional contractor for the restoration of the destroyed garage. Second, my father, my mother, and Madeline were to agree never to come within a 500-meter radius of my home or my workplace. They were also prohibited from attempting any form of contact whatsoever, including phone calls, emails, and social media. Third, they were to agree that any violation of these conditions would result in a substantial financial penalty. And finally, a clear statement was to be included specifying that these conditions were solely for the withdrawal of criminal charges and did not constitute forgiveness of their crimes. I was told that the opposing lawyer initially objected to the severity of these terms. But when my lawyer flatly stated, "If you refuse, we will proceed as planned and seek the maximum punishment from the prosecution," they seemed to resign themselves to it. A few days later, the settlement agreement bearing their signatures arrived. I was also informed that the $50,000 had already been transferred to the designated account. I looked at the documents, at the trembling signatures of my father, my mother, and Madeline, without feeling a single emotion. With this, everything was over. Through proper legal procedures, they had been completely severed from my life. There had been pain, but I had finally reclaimed a truly healthy life. On the day I thanked my lawyer and formally notified the police that I was withdrawing the charges, I went out to dinner with Heather at my favorite restaurant. She ordered an expensive bottle of wine and raised her glass, saying, "This is your victory." It was a victory toast that I had earned with my own strength. "Do you really think you lost your family?" Heather asked quietly. I shook my head. No. The people who betrayed me and tried to use me were no longer my family. And I have you. That's more than enough. Family is not defined by blood alone. I truly believed from the bottom of my heart that real bonds exist beyond trust and respect. After the settlement was finalized and I achieved a clean legal break from that hateful past, my daily life regained its sense of peace with surprising speed. The first thing I tackled, of course, was the restoration of the destroyed garage. I once again assembled the finest team of craftsmen who had helped me with the previous renovation. "This is terrible," was all anyone could say when they saw the site. But I told them this. "Yes, it's terrible. That's why I want you to rebuild it into something even more perfect than before. There is no budget limit. Use the best materials available and turn my vision into reality." Restoring the garage was not merely about returning it to its original state. It was like a sacred ritual to heal my wounded heart and purify a defiled sanctuary. The walls were packed with thicker insulation and soundproofing materials, and the floor was coated in a beautiful epoxy resin finish. The lighting was replaced with museum-grade spotlights designed to highlight the contours of my beloved car in the most flattering way. And the shutter was transformed into a heavy steel door equipped with the latest security system, integrated with fingerprint authentication. At the same time, I overhauled the security of the entire house. All the windows were fitted with security film and sensors, and high-resolution surveillance cameras were installed throughout the property. Everything was linked to my smartphone, allowing me to monitor my castle 24 hours a day from anywhere on the planet. Physically and mentally, this house became a literal fortress, one that no one could ever violate. A few weeks later, the garage was reborn in perfect form, more beautiful and more functional than before. It was as if it reflected my own self, made stronger through trials. To celebrate its completion, the first person I invited was Heather. As her eyes sparkled at the sight of the transformed space, I treated her to the finest champagne. This was my sanctuary, and a place to share happy moments with someone dear to me. Half a year passed, and my daily life had completely returned to peace. The hateful incident now felt like a distant nightmare from long ago. Then, one day, while shopping at the supermarket, an unexpected person called out to me. It was my Aunt Judith, who had doted on me when I was a child. "Well, Brianna, you look so well, I'm relieved. I tried contacting you so many times, but I couldn't reach you. I was really worried." From the relief on her face, I could tell she genuinely cared. "You really went through so much." Aunt Judith had always been one of the few relatives who consistently stood on my side. I nodded quietly and replied, "Thank you, Aunt Judith. I'm all right now." Hearing that, she hesitated slightly, then began speaking about my parents' situation with an apologetic look. "Your parents sold their house, and now they're living in a small apartment on the other side of town. It seems it was really hard for them to come up with the money they had to pay you. And then..." She lowered her voice. "They keep telling Madeline that it's time for her to become independent and work, but maybe because of the shock, she shut herself in her room and spends all day playing games. I hear the fighting between them never stops, and they're at each other every single day." She looked at me with sympathy, but my heart was strangely calm. No guilt, no pity rose within me. I simply thought quietly that they were receiving the natural consequences of their own actions. I parted ways with my aunt and returned to my home. As I polished my beloved car in the fully restored garage, I savored this quiet, fulfilling time I had gained. The face reflected in the gleaming hood was calm. I did not regret that decision in the slightest. All that filled my chest was a quiet pride in having protected my property and my dignity. It was not the exhilaration of having defeated someone else, but a deep, serene sense of affirmation that came from believing in my own worth and never yielding it. This house is my castle, a sanctuary that no one can violate, and the only place where my soul can truly rest. I am certain that my real life, one where I am never exploited and where I build my future on my own 2 feet, begins here and now.